So, dear friends, once again it's very warm and hearty welcome in this new lecture. Today we are going to move to the next topic, that is puberty in males and puberty in females. So first of all we have to discuss about the puberty in males, and then we shall study in detail about puberty in females. So let us start the study of topic puberty in males. I think all of you might be known the meaning of this term puberty. Puberty means sexual maturity. Now, puberty or sexual maturity means it is the period at which the reproductive organs start production of gametes as well as secretion of sex hormones. What is puberty? What is sexual maturity? That I am going to tell you. Puberty or sexual maturity means it is the period during which the reproductive organs of that individual, that may be male, that may be female, start the production of gametes. That is, as far as concerned with male individual, you know, the male reproductive organ, primary male reproductive organ, that is testes, male gonads, start the production of male gametes, that is sperms or spermatozoa, as well as the secretion of male sex hormone, that is testosterone. याचा अर्थ असा होतो की प्युबर्टी किंवा सेक्शुअल मॅच्युरिटी म्हणजे काय, तर हा असा कालावधी, हा असा एज पिरियड की ज्या वेळेला त्या व्यक्तीचं, त्या इंडिव्हिज्युअलचं, तो मेल असेल किंवा फिमेल असेल, त्याचे गोनॅड्स, त्याचे प्रायमरी सेक्स ऑर्गन्स, त्याचे प्रायमरी रिप्रोडक्टिव्ह ऑर्गन अर्थात मेलमध्ये टेस्टिस आणि फिमेलमध्ये ओव्हरी हे गॅमेट्स तयार करायला लागतात. म्हणजेच टेस्टिसमध्ये मेल गॅमेट तयार व्हायला सुरुवात होते, फिमेलमध्ये ओव्हा अर्थात एग सेल्स तयार व्हायला सुरुवात होतात आणि सायमल्टेनियसली दॅट गोनॅड्स, दॅट सेक्स ऑर्गन्स also starts the secretion of sex hormones. You know, sex hormones. In male, testosterone, and in female, estrogen and progesterone. Now, as far as concerned with males in human male, as far as concerned with human male, the puberty or sexual maturity is triggered by a hormone testosterone. It is triggered by hormone testosterone. Hormone testosterone. Actually, while studying male reproductive system and while studying the testes, especially, I have told you, in testes there are presence of some specialized endocrine cells, namely Leydig cells or interstitial cells, which are responsible for the secretion of hormone testosterone. आपण मेल रिप्रोडक्टिव्ह सिस्टीमचा अभ्यास करत असताना, टेस्टिसचा अभ्यास करत असताना पाहिलं की ह्यूमन टेस्टिसमध्ये त्या ठिकाणी काही विशिष्ट एंडोक्राइन सेल्स असतात ज्यांना आपण लेडिक सेल्स म्हणतो, इंटरस्टिशियल सेल्स म्हणतो, की ज्या टेस्टोस्टेरॉन हे हार्मोन तयार करत असतात. अर्थात whenever that Leydig cells, whenever that interstitial cells starts the secretion of testosterone, this testosterone is responsible for the growth and development of different secondary sex organs of male reproductive system. या टेस्टोस्टेरॉनच्या परिणामामुळे मेल रिप्रोडक्टिव्ह सिस्टीम मध्ये असणारे जे वेगवेगळे सेकंडरी सेक्स ऑर्गन्स आहेत, यू नो, सेकंडरी सेक्स ऑर्गन्स मीन्स वी कॅन से द एपिडिडायमिस, वॅसा डिफरेन्शिया, सेमाइनल वेसिकल्स, प्रोस्टेट ग्लँड, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. So this testosterone, it bring about the growth and development of different organs of male reproductive system, as well as it bring about the development of secondary or accessory sex characters. You know, secondary or accessory sex characters about which we have discussed initially also. म्हणजेच ह्या टेस्टोस्टेरॉनमुळे त्या मेल इंडिव्हिज्युअलमध्ये काही सेकंडरी सेक्स कॅरेक्टर्स पण दिसतात. Which are those secondary sex characters which develop in that male individual during sexual maturity or during puberty? Let us see briefly. First of all, we can say that there is enlargement of penis and scrotum. All of you are known penis and scrotum because we have studied about the male reproductive system. Second accessory sex character in male, that is the broadening of shoulder. Broadening of shoulders. Broadening of shoulders. We can say next character, that is the deepening of voice. Deepening of voice, that is low pitch voice due to the enlargement of larynx. You know, due to the enlargement of, we can say, Adam apple voice box, sound box, स्वर यंत्राची enlargement झाल्यामुळे त्या ठिकाणी low pitch voice हा निर्माण होतो, that is deepening of voice. Then there is a growth of facial hairs, growth of facial and body hairs, facial hairs. Of course, whenever the male individual attains the sexual maturity, attains the puberty, it starts the growth of facial hairs as well as it starts the growth of hairs on the chest, growth of hairs in the axillary region, also the growth of hairs in the pubic region, you know, around the scrotum, etc. Then next, in male there is a aggressiveness. Aggressiveness is seen in male. Aggressiveness is seen in male. In addition to that, there is a development of body musculature. Development of body musculature. It means the body of male individual becomes more muscular. Also we can say there is an increase in the height of that individual. Increase in the height of that individual. So these are different secondary sex characters, accessory sex character which develop in that male individual due to the effect of testosterone. Now we have to discuss about the puberty in female. Let us talk about the puberty in females. I repeatedly told you the meaning of term puberty. Just like the male, in females also the puberty or sexual maturity, means the reproductive organs undergoes the growth, development, maturation, and that female acquires the ability of sexual reproduction. So now here in females generally the puberty is attained around the age of 12 or 13 years. In male individual the puberty is attained between the age 13 to 16, little bit late. But in female the puberty is attained around the age, we can say 12 or 13. And we are going to study, but the puberty is marked by onset of menstrual cycle in females. Onset of menstrual cycle means beginning of MC, beginning of menses in female marks, I will say, the puberty in female. It means generally in females, in human females, the menstrual cycle, it starts around the age of 12 or 13. But in some females, the menstrual cycle, it starts quite before. We can say at the age of 10 years. At the age of 10 years. It is called precocious puberty. Precocious puberty. Listen this term. Precocious means we can say the premature puberty. याचा अर्थ विशिष्ट वयामध्ये येण्याच्या आधीच प्युबर्टी येणं, मेन्स्ट्रुअल सायकल सुरू होणं, याला प्रिकॉशियस प्युबर्टी असं म्हणतात. नाउ हियर in case of human females, the puberty is triggered by hormone FSH. It is triggered by hormone FSH. FSH, its long form is follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone. This hormone is secreted by pituitary gland. पिच्युटरी ग्लँड म्हणजे काय, इतर एंडोक्राइन ग्लँड्स कोणते आहेत, हा सगळा अभ्यास आपल्याला पुढे एका चॅप्टर मध्ये येणार आहे. पण तात्पुरतं या ठिकाणी मी असं सांगेन की पिच्युटरी ग्लँड नावाची एंडोक्राइन ग्लँड ही ह्यूमन ब्रेनच्या तळाला प्रेझेंट असते. इट इज कॉल्ड मास्टर एंडोक्राइन ग्लँड, अबाउट विच वी शॅल डिस्कस लेटर ऑन. बट that pituitary gland, that endocrine gland, in Marathi pituitary gland is called shirshastha granthi because it is present at the base of brain. It is a very small pea-sized gland, and that pituitary gland in female start the secretion of this hormone. त्या pituitary gland मार्फत सर्वसाधारणपणे वय वर्ष 12-13 झाल्यानंतर त्या फिमेल मध्ये FSH नावाचं हार्मोन तयार केलं जातं. It means in females the puberty, sexual maturity is induced, triggered by hormone FSH. This FSH hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, you please read that name carefully, follicle stimulating hormone. This hormone stimulates the ovary. This hormone stimulates the ovary for the growth and development of follicle. Growth and development of follicles. In our previous topic, we have studied in ovary it occurs the growth and development of mature follicle, that is graphian follicle. Primordial follicle gets converted into primary, primary follicle gets converted into secondary, and secondary follicle it grows, develops into the graphian follicle. It means in the ovary that growth and development of follicle occurs under the influence of hormone FSH. अर्थात ह्या FSH हार्मोन मुळे ओव्हरीज मध्ये ते ग्राफियन फॉलिकलची वाढ होते. Not only this, but this FSH also stimulate that follicles for the secretion of another hormone, that is estrogen. एवढंच नाही तर हे FSH नावाचं हार्मोन त्या फॉलिकल्सला, डेव्हलपिंग फॉलिकलला, इस्पेशली सेकंडरी आणि ग्राफियन फॉलिकलला इस्ट्रोजन नावाचं हार्मोन सिक्रेट करण्यासाठी उद्दीपित करत असतं, इंड्यूस करत असतं. And this estrogen hormone in females bring about the growth of different reproductive parts, different reproductive organs such as the oviducts, uterus, vagina, etc. so that the female can perform the sexual reproduction. Also, the hormone estrogen it bring about the development of certain secondary sex character in female. We have already discussed. अर्थात हे एस्ट्रोजन नावाचं हार्मोन कोणामार्फत तयार केलं जातं? It is secreted by the developing follicles, okay, under the influence of hormone FSH. What did I say? FSH, this hormone is secreted by pituitary gland around the age of 12 to 13 years. FSH hormone it stimulates ovary for the development of follicles. The developing follicles secrete the hormone estrogen, and this estrogen bring about the growth and development of reproductive parts, growth and development of reproductive parts, or I will say secondary sex organs in female, that is the growth, development, maturation of oviducts, uterus, vagina, etc. And also this estrogen is responsible for the development of accessory sex characters, secondary sex characters, secondary sex characters. Which are those secondary sex characters? We all are known. The first secondary sex character is nothing but the onset of MC, onset of MC, onset of menstrual cycle, beginning of menstrual cycle in that female. Second, that is broadening of pelvis, broadening of pelvis. Just try to understand. While studying the secondary sexual character in male, I told you in male individual it occurs the broadening of shoulder, but in female it occurs the broadening of pelvis. Pelvis कमरेचा भाग हा रुंद होतो. It occurs the deposition of subcutaneous fats in some body region, in some body parts. Especially there is more and more deposition of fats below the skin. Subcutaneous means below the skin, in the thighs, in the pelvic region, in the buttocks. Also we can say there is more and more deposition of fats in the shoulder region, also in the fascial region. Okay. In addition to that, there is a growth of axillary and pubic hairs. Axillary and pubic hairs. That is, in female, it occurs the growth of hairs in axillary region, in pubic region. You know pubic region means pelvic region near the genitalia. We have studied about the last time. So these are the accessory sex character developed in female under the influence of hormone estrogen. And of course, all these character mark the sexual maturity or puberty in females. But the most important, what did I say? That is the onset of menstrual cycle. We have to study about menstrual cycle. Actually, menstrual cycle is a reproductive cycle seen in primate mammals. So let us talk in detail about the reproductive cycle in females. Reproductive cycle in females. Please listen. In females, we are talking about the mammalian females. In mammalian females, during sexual reproduction, whatever different events occur, that different events occur in cyclic fashion, cyclically. It means during sexual reproduction in mammalian females, different events occur cyclically. अर्थात mammalian females बॉडीमध्ये सेक्शुअल रिप्रोडक्शन घडून येत असताना काही घटना, काही गोष्टी त्या पुन्हा एका विशिष्ट कालावधीच्या अंतराने रिपीट होत असतात. पुन्हा त्याच गोष्टी त्या फिमेलच्या बॉडीमध्ये सातत्याने घडत असतात. आणि अर्थातच या वेगवेगळ्या ज्या इव्हेंट्स आहेत, ज्या फिमेलच्या बॉडीमध्ये सायक्लिकली घडतात, दॅट कन्स्टिट्यूट, त्यांनाच आपण या ठिकाणी रिप्रोडक्टिव्ह सायकल असं म्हणतो. ॲक्च्युअली in mammalian females, the reproductive cycle is of two types. First one is called Oestrous cycle. Oestrous cycle. And second is menstrual cycle. Let me talk briefly about the Oestrous cycle. Very briefly about the Oestrous cycle. Oestrous cycle, it is seen in non-primate mammalian females. Listen carefully. Oestrous cycle, it is seen in non-primate mammalian females. All of you are known mammals, सस्तन प्राणी. Non-primate means what? Except primate. But what are primates? You must know. Primate means those mammals belonging to group Primata. Primates, it include the monkeys, apes, you know apes, gorilla, chimpanzee, orangutan, etc. Apes and human. These are primates. In these primates or in these primate females, the reproductive cycle is called menstrual cycle. While except these primate females, oestrus, this word stands for the heat. Oestrus, this word stands for the heat. Oestrus हा शब्द heat याला उद्देशून आहे. In this oestrus period, or heat period, it is a specific period in the year during which the female shows sexual responsiveness. Means what? In that heat period only, the female allows male for copulation, during which only female accepts male for copulation, for sexual mating. During this period only, in the body of female, the egg, ovum, that is female gametes are produced. Means in that period only, if copulation, that is mating, took place, then fertilization and pregnancy is possible. And in non-oestrus period is also called as the quiescence, during which female does not allow the mating with the male. Ultimately, there is no chance of sexual reproduction. Now, we people have to study most important, that is menstrual cycle. Okay, so now let us talk about the menstrual cycle. It is the characteristic feature of primate females. So now let us start the study of menstrual cycle, in short MC. Menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle is the reproductive cycle seen in primate females only. That is, menstrual cycle is seen in monkeys, in apes and in human female. Now, the duration of menstrual cycle is considered about 28 days. 28 days on an average. Of course, a little variation is possible, but on an average, the duration of MC, duration of one menstrual cycle, is considered of 28 days. It involves the cyclic changes taking place in the entire female reproductive system. Listen once again. Menstrual cycle, it involves the cyclic changes taking place in the entire female reproductive system under the influence of different hormones. I am going to talk once again. The menstrual cycle, it involves different cyclic, structural and functional changes in entire female reproductive system, especially in the ovary, in the oviducts, in the uterus, in the vagina, under the influence of different hormones in the time span of 28 days is known as menstrual cycle. परत एकदा मराठीतून सांगतो. अर्थात ज्या प्रायमेट फिमेल्स आहेत, ह्यूमन फिमेल, एप्स फिमेल, इन मंकीज फिमेल्स, 28 दिवसाच्या कालावधीमध्ये 28 दिवसाच्या कालावधीमध्ये त्या फिमेलच्या रिप्रोडक्टिव्ह सिस्टीम मध्ये काही रचनात्मक आणि काही कार्यात्मक, याचा अर्थ स्ट्रक्चरल आणि फंक्शनल चेंजेस पुन्हा पुन्हा 28 दिवसाच्या अंतराने घडत असतात. म्हणूनच याला आपण सायकल असं म्हणतो. नाउ ॲक्च्युअली द चेंजेस, स्ट्रक्चरल चेंजेस, functional changes taking place in different parts of female reproductive system are under the influence of different hormones, and therefore one must know about that hormones. अर्थात एंडोक्राइन ग्लँड्स मार्फत, डक्टलेस ग्लँड्स मार्फत, नलिका विरहित ग्रंथींमार्फत, अंतस्थ ग्रंथींमार्फत तयार करण्यात आलेले जे सिक्रिशन्स असतात, ज्यांना इंग्लिशमध्ये आपण हार्मोन, मराठीत संप्रेरक असं म्हणतो, की जे रक्तामार्फत वाहून नेले जातात. मग या ठिकाणी मेन्स्ट्रुअल सायकल मध्ये असंख्य हार्मोन्स या ठिकाणी तुम्हाला येणार आहे. such as the hormone secreted by pituitary gland. So the pituitary hormone, most important, FSH and LH नावाचे हे हार्मोन्स आहेत. In addition to that, the estrogen and progesterone, you know these hormones are produced by ovaries itself. Estrogen आणि progesterone ही जे हार्मोन फिमेलच्या ओव्हरी मध्येच तयार केले जातात. So I am going to say once again that the menstrual cycle, it involves different structural and functional changes in the female reproductive system, in the female reproductive tract, under the influence of different hormones at regular interval of 28 days. I already told you, in human female, the first MC, the first menstrual cycle, it begins around the age of 12 or 13 years, and the onset of menstrual cycle, appearance of first menstrual cycle in human female is called menarche. Please listen it carefully. पहिला मेन्स्ट्रुअल सायकल येणं त्या ह्यूमन फिमेल मध्ये याला म्हटलं जातं मेनार्च. अँड आफ्टर मेनार्च मीन्स फ्रॉम एज 12 to 13 that menstrual cycle appears regularly in that female up to the age of 45 to 50 years. Up to the age of 45 to 50 years. अर्थात 12-13 वय वर्षापासून पहिलं मेन्स्ट्रुअल सायकल आल्यापासून सर्वसाधारण त्या फिमेल मध्ये वय वर्ष 45-50 होईपर्यंत मेन्स्ट्रुअल सायकल हे दर महिन्याला 28 दिवसाच्या फरकाने परत येत असतात. ओनली मेन्स्ट्रुअल सायकल डज नॉट अपीअर ड्यूरिंग प्रेग्नन्सी, बट आफ्टर द एज ऑफ 45 to 50 years the menstrual cycle become irregular. Menstrual cycles become irregular, and later on the menstrual cycle get completely stopped. Menstrual cycle gets completely stopped, means there is no further menstrual cycle. This cessation of MC, cessation means stopping, complete stopping of menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle येणं थांबणं, that cessation of menstrual cycle is known as menopause. म्हटलं जातं menopause. Okay, it means the appearance of first menstrual cycle in that female individual is called menarche, and termination of menstrual cycle, cessation of menstrual cycle is called as the menopause. And that's why we can say life or the duration from menarche up to the menopause is considered as true reproductive life of female. It is true reproductive life of female. True reproductive life of female. It means only during this age period the female can take active part in the process of sexual reproduction. Female cannot reproduce before menarche or after menopause. Why this is so? Because you know, during menstrual cycle it occurs or it starts the development of follicles in the ovary, also the formation of egg cell, ovum, and after menopause there is no chance of further formation of follicles in the ovary, no chance of further formation of egg, so no chance of reproduction, no chance of pregnancy. Now we have to study what happens during menstrual cycle, which structural and functional changes took place in the female reproductive system. Now the menstrual cycle, it involves 4 phases. There are 4 phases of menstrual cycle. Let me write that 4 phases at the blackboard. First one is menstrual phase. Second, follicular phase. Follicular phase. Third one, ovulatory phase. Ovulatory phase. And fourth is called luteal phase. Luteal phase. So now we have to discuss which structural and functional changes take place during menstrual cycle in female reproductive system, one by one each of menstrual cycle. So now we have to study about these 4 phases of menstrual cycle, such as menstrual phase, follicular phase, ovulatory phase and luteal phase. But as I repeatedly told you that the structural and functional changes taking place in the female reproductive tract are under the influence of different hormones, especially FSH, LH, progesterone, estrogen, inhibin, etc. And that's why before starting the study of these different phases, let me teach you little bit about the hormones LH, FSH, etc. and briefly about the role of that hormones. See, here is supposed to be a lateral view of brain. Just imagine about the brain, we shall study later on in our separate chapter. Just imagine here is the lateral view of our brain. Now at the base of brain, there is a presence of very small and pea-sized gland. This gland is called as pituitary gland. It is called pituitary gland. This pituitary gland is also called as master endocrine gland. Why this is so? We shall study later on. But you know what is endocrine gland, what are endocrine gland? At least you all are aware. Endocrine gland means the glands which does not possess ducts to carry their secretion. ज्या ग्लँड्सला त्यांनी तयार केलेलं सिक्रेशन दुसऱ्या एखाद्या डिस्टंट ऑर्गन पर्यंत वाहून नेण्यासाठी नलिका नसतात, डक्ट्स नसतात, अशा डक्टलेस ग्लँड्सला नलिका विरहित ग्रंथींना आपण एंडोक्राइन ग्लँड्स म्हणतो. अँड the secretion of endocrine glands is termed as hormone. Now here pituitary gland is one of the endocrine glands in human being. This pituitary gland itself secretes in all 10 different hormones. Pituitary gland secretes in all 10 different hormones. But here, and we have to consider about the 2 hormones secreted by pituitary gland. FSH and LH. FSH and LH. Let me explain you about the FSH and LH. FSH, it is the short form of follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone, FSH. And LH, its long form is luteinizing hormone. Okay. Now let me tell you briefly about the role of FSH and about the role of LH. When female attains sexual maturity around the age of 12 or 13 years, at that time anterior pituitary starts the secretion of FSH. Is that clear? When the female it attains sexual maturity around the age of 12 or 13, the anterior pituitary gland starts the secretion of FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. This hormone, it stimulates the ovary. It stimulates the ovary for the growth and development of graphian follicle, mature follicle from the primordial and primary follicle. We have already studied about the histological structure of ovary. You know, largest, mature, well-grown follicle is known as the graphian follicle. And we know in this graphian follicle there is a presence of this developing stage of ovum, primary oocyte, and when that gets shaded out, gets converted into secondary oocyte. Here is primary oocyte. It is diploid, primary oocyte. Is that clear? Also, this FSH stimulate the graphian follicle. It also stimulate graphian follicle for the secretion of female sex hormone, that is estrogen. Now let us talk the role of LH. आता LH हे जे दुसरा हार्मोन आहे त्याचं कार्य काय ते पण सांगतो. LH luteinizing hormone. This luteinizing hormone it bring about the busting of graphian follicle. It bring about the breaking down of graphian follicle. It means the LH it induces the busting of graphian follicle so that the developing stage of ovum, that is primary oocyte, is shaded outside the ovary. अर्थात LHचं कार्य काय तर या ग्राफियन फॉलिकलचं बस्टिंग घडवून आणणं. हे ग्राफियन फॉलिकल बस्ट होतं, रप्चर होतं आणि ओव्हरीच्या वॉलमधून ओव्हरीची वॉलही ब्रेक होते आणि तिथून हे प्रायमरी oocyte आता त्याचं विभाजन होऊन त्याचं रूपांतर होतं सेकंडरी oocyte मध्ये. You know, we have already studied the busting of graphian follicle and shedding of ovum outside the ovary is called ovulation. याला आपण ovulation असं म्हणतो. म्हणजे LHचं प्रमुख कार्य काय तर LHचं कार्य आहे ग्राफियन फॉलिकलचं बस्टिंग, रप्चर घडवून आणणं, ओव्ह्युलेशन घडवून आणणं. एवढंच नाही तर रिमेनिंग पार्ट ऑफ दिस ग्राफियन फॉलिकल, the remaining part of graphian follicle get modified into yellow body. That yellow body is called as corpus luteum. It is again endocrine in nature, and this corpus luteum is responsible for the secretion of another female sex hormone, that is progesterone. Is that clear? We have already studied. Now we are moving towards the actual different phases of menstrual cycle. So first of all, let us talk about first phase, that is menstrual phase. The menstrual phase is also called as a destructive phase. It is also called destructive phase, or it may be called as the bleeding phase. It may be called as a bleeding phase, pili phase. Menstrual phase, destructive phase or bleeding phase. The menstrual phase or destructive phase is the first phase in 28 days menstrual cycle. It is the first phase in the 28 days menstrual cycle. You all are aware, tentative the duration of menstrual cycle in human female is 28 days. 28 दिवसाचं जे menstrual cycle आहे त्याच्यामध्ये पहिली जी फेज आहे ती मेन्स्ट्रुअल फेज मानली जाते. आणि द मेन्स्ट्रुअल फेज इट लास्ट्स फॉर नियर अबाउट 4 days. It lasts for near about 4 days. अर्थात ही फेज 4 दिवसांची मानली जाते. याचा अर्थ आपण असं म्हणू शकू की मेन्स्ट्रुअल फेज इट स्टार्ट्स from first day up to the 4th day of 28 days menstrual cycle. 28 दिवसाच्या मेन्स्ट्रुअल सायकल मध्ये पहिल्या दिवसापासून चौथ्या दिवसापर्यंतचा कालावधीला आपण मेन्स्ट्रुअल फेज म्हणतो. आता काय होतं मेन्स्ट्रुअल फेज मध्ये ते आपल्याला समजून घ्यायचंय. बट बिफोर टू दॅट अगेन I want to tell you the nature, situation, how is the structure of that female reproductive system before beginning of menstrual phase. Menstrual phase सुरू होण्याच्या आधी फिमेल रिप्रोडक्टिव्ह ट्रॅक्टचं स्वरूप कसं असतं, त्याचं नेचर, त्याची रचना कशी असते हे थोडक्यात मी आधी सांगून टाकतो. या ठिकाणी मी एक छोटीशी आकृती काढतोय. लुक, हियर इज सपोज टू बी द ओव्हरी, सिंगल ओव्हरी. You know, here is the oviduct, single oviduct I am going to show. All of you are aware this middle large dilated part of oviduct is called ampulla. Then here is a isthmus, uterine duct, and we know it opens into the uterus, isn't it? Here is a body of uterus, cervix and vagina. Only here I have shown one side, only single ovary, single oviduct. Is that clear? Ovary, oviduct, uterus, ovary, oviduct, uterus, cervix and vagina. Now before menstrual phase, the secondary oocyte is here. Secondary oocyte is here in the ampulla part of oviduct. This is secondary oocyte and it just waits for the sperm. तो sperm येण्याची वाट बघत असतो फर्टिलायझेशन साठी. तसंच या ठिकाणी फॅलोपियन ट्यूब जी आहे किंवा ही जी ओव्हिडक्ट मी दाखवली आहे, या ओव्हिडक्टचं लाइनिंग हे थिक झालेलं असतं. The lining of oviduct is thick. Also the lining of uterus is very much thick. Lining of uterus is very much thick, multi-layered. Lining of uterus is very much thick, multi-layered, about 8 to 9 millimeter in its thickness. एवढंच नाही तर हे एंडोमेट्रियम हे हायली व्हॅस्क्युलर स्थितीत असतं. इट हॅज a rich supply of blood capillaries. या एंडोमेट्रियमच्या काही सेल्स ग्लँड्स म्हणून काम करतात आणि ते काहीतरी सिक्रीशन, युटेराइन सिक्रीशन किंवा युटेराइन मिल्क या ठिकाणी तयार करत असतात. इवन सर्विक्स आणि वजायना यांचं सुद्धा एंडोमेट्रियम म्हणजे आतले लेअर हे थिक झालेले असतात. ही सगळी परिस्थिती मी सांगतोय बिफोर द बिगिनिंग ऑफ मेन्स्ट्रुअल फेज, बिफोर द बिगिनिंग ऑफ डिस्ट्रक्टिव्ह फेज. Is that clear? Now look, I have already told you the menstrual phase or destructive phase or bleeding phase appears only if there is no fertilization, isn't it? Menstrual phase or destructive phase or bleeding phase appears only if there is no fertilization, there is no pregnancy. जर fertilization झालं नसेल, जर pregnancy maintain झाली नसेल तरच फक्त menstrual phase येत असते. This menstrual phase is characterized by menstruation. It is characterized by menstruation. It may be called as the menstrual flow or simply called as menses. Simply called as menses. Now what is menstruation, what is menses, what is menstrual flow, that now just we are going to study. If fertilization does not take place, जर fertilization झालं नाही, if pregnancy is not maintained, pregnancy maintain झाली नाही, तर initially the secondary oocyte regresses by autolysis, or I will say it undergoes self degeneration. This secondary oocyte, it shows autolysis, it shows self degeneration. अर्थात हा सेकंडरी oocyte स्वतःहून इनएक्टिव्ह होऊन जातो, हा नष्ट होऊन जातो. ऑटोलायसिस याचा अर्थ सेल्फ डिस्ट्रक्शन होऊन जातो. Now due to the high level of progesterone याचा अर्थ मेन्स्ट्रुअल फेज सुरू होण्याच्या आधी त्या फिमेलच्या रक्तामध्ये, फिमेलच्या बॉडीमध्ये प्रोजेस्टेरॉनची पातळी खूप जास्त असते, कारण प्रोजेस्टेरॉन इज नेसेसरी टू मेंटेन द प्रेग्नन्सी. मीन्स इफ fertilization took place, if pregnancy get maintained, then to maintain the pregnancy progesterone is necessary. अर्थात ही सगळी तयारी प्रेग्नन्सी साठीची असते, पण आता फर्टिलायझेशनच झालं नाही, प्रेग्नन्सीच मेंटेन होत नाहीये आणि त्यामुळे त्या फिमेलच्या रक्तामध्ये जे प्रचंड असं प्रोजेस्टेरॉनची लेवल होती, त्या प्रोजेस्टेरॉनच्या हाय लेवलमुळे काय होतं, द LH, दिस हार्मोन LH, the secretion of LH is suppressed. The secretion of LH is reduced. Try to understand. Actually, it is called negative feedback mechanism. याला negative feedback mechanism म्हणतात. याचा अर्थ त्या फिमेलच्या रक्तामध्ये प्रोजेस्टेरॉनची पातळी खूप जास्त असल्यामुळे पिट्युटरी ग्लँड कडून LH हार्मोन सिक्रीट केलं जात नाही किंवा अल्प प्रमाणात सिक्रीट केलं जातं. आता LHच तयार होत नाहीये, सो अल्टिमेटली व्हॉट विल हॅपन, LH जर तयार होत नसेल तर काय होणार आहे, द कार्पस ल्युटियम इट रिग्रेसेस. कार्पस ल्युटियम रिग्रेसेस means what, it regains its initial undeveloped stage. प्रोग्रेशन आणि रिग्रेशन बोथ आर अँटिनिम्स, हे विरुद्ध शब्द आहे. तुम्हाला माहिती आहे, प्रोग्रेशन याचा अर्थ विकास होणं, डेव्हलपमेंट होणं, आणि रिग्रेशन याचा अर्थ त्याच्या उलट. म्हणजे हा कार्पस ल्युटियम नष्ट होत नाही, पण तो रिग्रेस येतो. याचा अर्थ पुन्हा त्याच्या पूर्वीच्या अनडेव्हलप्ड स्टेजला जातो, तो अक्रियाशील व्हायला लागतो, इनएक्टिव्ह व्हायला लागतो. का? बिकॉज देयर इज नो सिक्रीशन ऑफ LH. ॲज द कार्पस ल्युटियम रिग्रेसेस, कार्पस ल्युटियमचं रिग्रेशन व्हायला लागल्यामुळे, तो अक्रियाशील व्हायला लागल्यामुळे ऑब्वियसली द प्रोजेस्टेरॉन, द लेवल ऑफ प्रोजेस्टेरॉन इन द ब्लड ऑफ मदर फॉल्स डाऊन. प्रोजेस्टेरॉनची पातळी आईच्या रक्तातली कमी कमी व्हायला लागते. अँड ॲज द लेवल ऑफ प्रोजेस्टेरॉन falls down, it occurs the destruction of endometrium of uterus. It occurs the destruction of the endometrial lining of uterus. ह्या uterusचं जे endometrium आहे, it occurs the destruction of the endometrial cells, endometrial tissue of uterus. Also it occurs the destruction of lining of fallopian tube, लाइनिंग ऑफ ओव्हिडा. या ओव्हिडक्टचं लाइनिंग, आतला थर तयार करणाऱ्या ज्या पेशी आहेत, तुटी आहेत, त्या पण त्या ठिकाणी ब्रेक व्हायला लागतात. इट ऑकर द डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ लाइनिंग ऑफ सर्विक्स अँड युटेरस अँड ऑल दीज रप्चर्ड cells, I will say cell debris, that dead cells, along with blood. Very obvious, when it occurs the rupturing of endometrium, the blood vessels also rupture, due to which that blood oozes out. We can say this unfertilized ovum, हे fertilized न झालेलं ovum किंवा ऑटोलायसिस झालेलं ovum जे आहे ते म्युकस, स्टिकी सिक्रीशन, या ठिकाणी युटेरस मध्ये तयार झालेलं स्टिकी सिक्रीशन, म्युकस, आणि या युटेरसच्या ग्लँड्सने तयार केलेलं युटेराइन सिक्रीशन, एक स्टिकी पदार्थ, हे सगळं मटेरियल स्लोली स्लॉज्ड आउट ऑफ द फिमेल बॉडी थ्रू द वजाइनल ओपनिंग. अर्थात हे सगळं मटेरियल हळूहळू त्या फिमेलच्या बॉडीमधून बाहेर टाकून दिलं जातं. अँड दिस ऍक्ट is actually called as the menstruation. याला आपण म्हणतो menstruation, याला म्हणतो menses, किंवा आपण याला म्हणतो मासिक पाळी येणं. अर्थात हे होत असताना ब्लडही बाहेर टाकलं जातं. सर्वसाधारण या 4 दिवसामध्ये प्रत्येक महिन्याला 35 ते 40 ml इतकं रक्त, इतकं ब्लड त्या फिमेलच्या बॉडीमधून बाहेर टाकलं जात असतं. अर्थात due to this what happens, there is a thinning of endometrium. बघा, या ठिकाणी जे एंडोमेट्रियम थिक होतं, ते अर्थातच त्या सेल्स ब्रेक झाल्यामुळे ते पुन्हा थिन होऊन जातं. म्हणजे या ठिकाणी एंडोमेट्रियम नाउ रिमेन्स ओनली सिंगल लेड थिक. एंडोमेट्रियम अशा प्रकारे थिन होऊन जात असतं. या ठिकाणी सेकंडरी ओसाइट बाहेर टाकलं गेलं. आता ही जी प्रक्रिया आहे मेन्स्ट्रुएशनची, हिला विपिंग ऑफ युटेरस फॉर द लॉस्ट ऑफ ओव्हम असं पण म्हणतात. यू नो विपिंग, शेडिंग ऑफ टीयर्स. जणू काही ह्या युटेरस मधून हे मटेरियल सगळं बाहेर पडणं असं मानलं जातं किंवा असं म्हटलं जातं की जणू काही ती युटेरस विपिंग करते. दॅट युटेरस इज शेडिंग द टीयर्स फॉर द लॉस ऑफ ओव्हम. म्हणजे हा ओव्हम हा सेकंडरी oocyte फर्टिलाइज झाला नाही, फर्टिलायझेशन झालं नाही, म्हणून जणू काही ती युटेरस टीयर्स शेड करते, विपिंग करते, जणू रडते, हुंदके देऊन रडते, असा जणू त्याचा अर्थ मानला जातो. किंवा दिस प्रोसेस ऑफ मेन्स्ट्रुएशन इज ऑल्सो डिस्क्राइब्ड ॲज funeral of unfertilized ovum. You know funeral, isn't it? The final ritual whenever the person dies off, the final ritual, that is burrowing or cremation is nothing but the funeral, अंत्यविधी. जणू काही या ठिकाणी तो न फर्टिलाइज झालेला सेकंडरी oocyte या इतर मटेरियल बरोबर बाहेर फेकून देणं, it is described as the funeral of unfertilized ovum. So here we have studied about the menstrual phase. या ठिकाणी आपण menstrual phase बाबत पाहिलं. अर्थात आता menstrual phase मध्ये प्रोजेस्टेरॉनची रक्तातली पातळी खूप कमी झाली आहे, इस्ट्रोजनची पातळी खूप कमी झाली आहे, LH ची पण पातळी खूप कमी झाली आहे. Now it starts the second phase. आता दुसरी फेज सुरू होते, that is follicular phase. त्याच्या बाबत आता आपण बघूया. So now let us move to the second phase, that is follicular phase. Follicular phase. Follicular phase is also called as post-menstrual phase, post-bleeding phase, because this phase comes after menstrual phase. Therefore, it may be called as the post-menstrual or post-bleeding phase. The follicular phase is also known as proliferative phase. Proliferative phase. Now let us see. The follicular phase or proliferative phase, it lasts for about 8 to 9 days. 8 to 9 days. Just now we have studied that the menstrual phase, it lasts for 4 days. That is from first day to the 4th day of 28 days menstrual cycle. So from 5th day up to the 13th day or 14th day, 13th to 14th day, this second phase comes, that is follicular or proliferative phase. Let us see what happens during this phase. Now here at this stage in the ovary there is no mature follicle, because already we know the graphian follicle has burst off. Now there is no mature follicle, no graphian follicle. Now at the beginning of follicular phase, the anterior pituitary gland again starts the secretion of FSH. Anterior pituitary gland starts the secretion of FSH. आता anterior pituitary gland ही पुन्हा FSH हे हार्मोन सिक्रेट करायला सुरुवात करते. This hormone induces ovary, stimulate ovary for the growth and development of new graphian follicle, new mature follicle. It means now out of that 2 ovaries, out of that 2 ovaries, in any one of the ovary it occurs the growth, development of new follicle from primordial to primary to secondary to graphian follicle. So here in this phase, initially due to the influence of FSH in one of the ovaries, a new graphian follicle is formed, new graphian follicle is formed. Also the FSH, it induces the follicular cells of graphian follicle for the secretion of estrogen. अर्थात त्या FSH च्या परिणामामुळे ओव्हरीमध्ये नवीन ग्राफियन फॉलिकल तयार होतं आणि या ग्राफियन फॉलिकलच्या ज्या फॉलिक्युलर सेल्स आहेत त्यांच्याकडून इस्ट्रोजन नावाचं हार्मोन हे तयार व्हायला लागतं. It means now again in the blood of that female it builds up the level of estrogen. It rises the level of एस्ट्रोजन. पर्यायाने या ठिकाणी इस्ट्रोजनची पातळी ही वाढायला लागते. Simultaneously this estrogen it induces again the proliferation or growth of uterine endometrium. Look, just now we have studied due to the menstruation the endometrium of uterus is completely broken down. Now the uterine endometrium is very thin, single layered, just 1 millimeter in thickness, and now again the cells of this uterine endometrium divides, undergoes multiplication, and it occurs the thickening of uterine endometrium. Thickening of endometrium. That is, it occurs the proliferation of uterine endometrium. That's why this phase is called proliferative phase. Why this is so? Actually, it is the preparation of that uterus for the implantation and for the nourishment of embryo likely to come after fertilization. याचा अर्थ समजा फर्टिलायझेशन जर झालं आणि त्या ठिकाणी जर एम्ब्रियो तयार झाला, गर्भाची वाढ सुरू झाली, तर त्या एम्ब्रियोला या ठिकाणी गर्भाशयामध्ये इम्प्लांट होण्यासाठी आणि त्याची सुयोग्य वाढ व्हावी याच्यासाठी ही युटेरस तयारी करत असते. इट इज द प्रिपरेशन. सो द एस्ट्रोजन it induces again the thickening of uterine endometrium. Also it stimulates little bit the thickening of lining of oviduct. Now at the end of this phase there is a very high level of estrogen in the blood of that female. अर्थात त्या ठिकाणी आता ही फेज संपत येईपर्यंत त्या फिमेलच्या रक्तामध्ये इस्ट्रोजनची पातळी खूप वाढलेली असते. And because of this high level of estrogen, what happens? This high level of estrogen in the blood of that female, it inhibits the secretion of FSH. अर्थात रक्तामध्ये इस्ट्रोजनची पातळी जास्त झाल्यामुळे पिट्युटरी ग्लँड मार्फत FSH सिक्रीशन जे होत असतं त्याला प्रतिरोध केला जातो, त्याला इनहिबिट केलं जातं. आणि दुसऱ्या बाजूला द सिक्रीशन ऑफ LH इज इंड्यूस्ड. ट्राय टू अंडरस्टँड. Estrogen, high level of estrogen in the blood of that female, it inhibits the secretion of FSH and stimulates the secretion of LH. That is another hormone, luteinizing hormone by anterior pituitary. Now, due to the secretion of LH चं secretion सुरू झाल्याबरोबर त्या ठिकाणी this graphian follicle enclosing developmental stage of ovum, that is primary oocyte. You know, this graphian follicle slowly moves near the thin wall of ovary. हे ग्राफियन फॉलिकल हळूहळू ओव्हरीच्या वॉल जवळ येतं. The wall of ovary breaks at one point and the graphian follicle bursts off. Graphian follicle ruptures. Graphian follicle break होतं. And the primary oocyte, the developmental stage of ovum, diploid primary oocyte, here I have shown with the help of pink color, that get shaded outside the ovary. You know, this process of shedding out, release out of primary oocyte outside the ovary is called ovulation. And this ovulation occurs around 14th day of menstrual cycle. अर्थात हे ओव्ह्युलेशन सर्वसाधारण मेन्स्ट्रुअल सायकलच्या 14व्या दिवशी घडून येत असतं आणि म्हणून या ठिकाणी ती ओव्ह्युलेशनची जी फेज आहे तिला म्हटलं जातं ओव्ह्युलेटरी फेज. इट लास्ट्स ओनली फॉर 24 hours and generally the ovulation occurs around 14th day. of MC. At the time of ovulation, the primary oocyte, it completes its meiosis. या प्रायमरी oocyteचं meiosis या पद्धतीने विभाजन होतं आणि डिप्लॉइड प्रायमरी oocyte पासून दोन haploid cells तयार होतात which are unequal in size. The larger one is called secondary oocyte and smaller one is called first polar body. Of course, now this ovum which is in secondary oocyte stage, when get shaded out from the ovary, you know, it is captured by the fimbriae, it is pushed into the infundibulum and it is carried here up to the ampulla. या ठिकाणी हे सेकंडरी oocyte घेऊन परत थांबतं. कशासाठी? अगेन फॉर स्पर्म्स, अगेन फॉर स्पर्मॅटोझोन, फॉर फर्टिलायझेशन. Now here we have seen the third phase, ovulatory phase. One more thing I want to add here. I said just now that ovulation occurs around 14th day of menstrual cycle, isn't it? And this ovum in secondary oocyte stage remains active only for few hours. Only for few hours. And if the sperm reached ovum at that time, or we can say within that time, then and then only fertilization is possible and pregnancy is maintained. Try to understand. And that's why this 14th day, theoretically, this 14th day of menstrual cycle is considered as high risk period, because during which the chances of fertilization and maintenance of pregnancy is more. Okay, come to the last phase, that is luteal phase. Luteal phase. Luteal phase is also called as post-ovulatory phase because it comes after ovulatory phase, after ovulation, and now this luteal phase is also called as secretory phase. Also called as secretory phase. Why? Let me explain you. Just now we have seen that it occurs ovulation under the influence of hormone LH, isn't it? Under the influence of hormone LH, graphian follicle burst off, ovum, secondary oocyte shaded outside the ovary, and now the remnant of graphian follicle, remaining part of graphian follicle get modified, get converted into another structure, another endocrinal body, that is yellow body or corpus luteum. Means it occurs the formation, development of corpus luteum, yellow body. Now corpus luteum is formed around, completely formed around, we can say 18th day of menstrual cycle. सर्वसाधारण 18व्या दिवशी कार्पस ल्युटियम हे पूर्ण विकसित झालेलं असतं. and now this corpus luteum starts the secretion of large amount of progesterone. हे कार्पस ल्युटियम 18व्या दिवशी तयार होऊन जातं, लक्षात घ्या, आणि हे प्रोजेस्टेरॉन सिक्रेट करत असतं. also it secretes little estrogen, not only progesterone, it also secretes little estrogen. Also it secretes one more hormone, inhibin, in little quantity, inhibin. And thus now the level of progesterone it builds up. आता परत रक्तामध्ये प्रोजेस्टेरॉनची पातळी वाढायला लागते. Due to the effect of progesterone, the endometrial lining of uterus gradually further becomes thicker and thickest. Endometrial lining आणखी thick होते. It becomes highly vascular. Also it occurs the development of glands, and that uterine glands, या uterine endometrium मध्ये तयार झालेल्या या glands काहीतरी secretion secrete करतात, नरिशिंग फ्लुइड सिक्रेट करतात. अर्थात त्या नरिशिंग फ्लुइडला युटेराइन मिल्क असं पण म्हणतात. इट इज नेसेसरी फॉर द नरिशमेंट ऑफ डेव्हलपिंग एम्ब्रियो, म्हणजे फर्टिलायझेशन झालं, एम्ब्रियो तयार झाला, तर अर्थातच तो एम्ब्रियो या ठिकाणी येणार आहे, गर्भाशयात येणार आहे, युटेरसमध्ये येणार आहे आणि त्याच्या नरिशमेंटसाठी या ठिकाणी युटेराइन ग्लँड्स मार्फत युटेराइन मिल्क हे नरिशिंग फ्लुइड तयार केलं जातं. मीन्स हिअर in this phase further it occurs the thickening of endometrial lining. Endometrium becomes very thick, highly vascular, highly glandular. Is that clear? Why this is necessary? Again, to receive the embryo, to receive the embryo. If fertilization took place, जर fertilization झालं तर अर्थात पुढे fertilization नंतर एम्ब्रियो जो गर्भ तयार होणार आहे त्याला रिसीव्ह करण्यासाठी या ठिकाणी ही युटेरसची सगळी तयारी झालेली असते. नाव इफ फर्टिलायझेशन ऑकर, तर फर्टिलायझेशन झालं तर दॅट एम्ब्रियो कम्स हिअर. फर्टिलायझेशन इथे होतं, आपल्याला माहिती आहे, इट इज द साइट ऑफ फर्टिलायझेशन. एम्पुला, स्पर्म्स इकडे येतात, इथे फर्टिलायझेशन होतं. अबाउट दॅट प्रोसेस ऑफ फर्टिलायझेशन वी शॅल स्टडी लेटर ऑन. But after fertilization, the zygote, it starts growth of embryo आणि तो एम्ब्रियो इकडे येतो या ठिकाणी. आणि हा एम्ब्रियो, डेव्हलपिंग एम्ब्रियो अर्थात त्या युटेरसच्या एंडोमेट्रियमला अँकर होतो, अटॅच होतो, त्याला इम्प्लांटेशन म्हणतात. आणि ते इम्प्लांटेशन व्यवस्थित व्हावं आणि एम्ब्रियोची वाढ विकास व्यवस्थित व्हावी याच्यासाठी ही सगळी तयारी झालेली असते. अर्थात जर फर्टिलायझेशन झालं तर ऑब्वियसली टू मेंटेन द प्रेग्नन्सी, द कार्पस ल्युटियम रिमेन्स ॲज इट इज अँड इट continuously secrete the hormone progesterone. Because this progesterone it maintains the thick nature of endometrium. It helps for the growth of placenta. Placenta, you know, the connecting bridge between maternal tissue and maternal tissue, that is mother and fetus. आईचं गर्भाशय आणि त्या गर्भाशयात वाढ होणारा गर्भ, त्या दोघांना जोडणारा जो कनेक्टिंग ब्रिज असतो त्याला प्लासेंटा असं म्हणतात. अर्थात तो प्लासेंटा डेव्हलप होण्यासाठी पण प्रोजेस्टेरॉनची गरज असते. मग जर त्या ठिकाणी प्रेग्नन्सी मेंटेन झाली तर प्लासेंटा डेव्हलप होतो and that placenta it secretes one hormone called HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. This hormone is secreted by the placenta, that is connecting bridge between mother and fetus, ज्याला आपण मराठीत नाळ असं म्हणतो. आणि अर्थात हे हार्मोन त्या ठिकाणी कार्पस ल्युटियमला रिटेन करतं आणि प्रोजेस्टेरॉन सिक्रेट करायला उद्दीपित करत असतं. त्या फिमेलच्या ब्लडमध्ये आणि युरिनमध्ये जर हे हार्मोन आढळलं तर इट इज कन्फर्म दॅट मदर or I will say that female is pregnant. अर्थात प्रेग्नंट वुमन आहे हे ओळखण्याची ही टेस्ट आहे. काय? The presence of hormone, human chorionic gonadotropin hormone in the blood and also in trace amount in the urine of that anyway. पण समजा फर्टिलायझेशन झालं नाही, तर काय होईल? साधी गोष्ट आहे. या ठिकाणी पहिल्यांदा हा कार्पस ल्युटियम मार्फत तयार केले जाणारे हे जे 3 हार्मोन आहे त्याच्यातले हे जे इनहिबिन हार्मोन आहे, हे इनहिबिन हार्मोन इकडे LH च्या सिक्रेशनला प्रतिबंध करत असतं, इनहिबिट करत असतं. म्हणजे आता पिट्युटरी ग्लँड कडून LH तयार होत नाहीये. मग LH जर तयार होत नाहीये, दुसऱ्या बाजूला प्रेग्नन्सी मेंटेन झालेली नाहीये, फर्टिलायझेशन झालेलं नाहीये, पर्यायाने हे हार्मोन तयार होत नाहीये प्लासेंटा मार्फत, तर नाव कार्पस ल्युटियम इट रिग्रेसेस. कार्पस ल्युटियम रिग्रेस व्हायला लागतं, इनएक्टिव्ह व्हायला लागतं. And as corpus luteum regresses, obviously the level of progesterone again falls down. पुन्हा प्रोजेस्टेरॉनची पातळी हळूहळू कमी व्हायला लागेल त्या फिमेलच्या रक्तामधली. and obviously it again starts the rupturing, breaking down of uterine endometrium, and that ruptured cells, blood mucus and all that material slowly along with unfertilized ovum slowly sloshed outside the body of female through the vaginal opening, means again it starts the menstruation, menstrual flow, menses, that is again the first phase is repeated. In this manner it occurs the 4 phases of menstrual cycle. Here we have completed the topic female reproductive cycle. Little bit we have discussed about the Oestrous cycle and also about the menstrual cycle. So let us stop here today. Thank you and take great care of yourself.